let Lauren help you. Today we're going to go over how I start an estimate for a customer without doing a site visit or getting any measurements from the client. This is typically how I start an estimate when I get a customer that calls in for a new sign. So the first thing you always want to do is go check out the address on Google Maps and just kind of look over some of the code for the town, county, city or state that the sign's going to go in. So the first thing I'm going to go do here is go look at the address on Google Maps. So I got thrown to the back of the building. Let's go to the front here. So I kind of already did a little bit of like pre-footwork on this. I know where the spot is that the customer wants to go. So it's actually going to be right here in between the show and Dollar Tree. So what I did was I looked up the address. I found the county. The closest town that this address was located to was more of like a downtown area, and then outside of that downtown area was the county. So I had to look up the county code, and if you just Google the actual county, you'll get the Google Map image of the red outline of the county. So I was sure that the address is within this county. And then I just went to Google and searched the same thing, Harnett County, and then town code. You usually get some kind of codelibrary.com or some kind of towncode.com website that'll have all of the town code kind of separated by chapters, which makes it super easy to find the sign code. I always just go up here to like a search button and I'll just type in signs. You do get a lot of kind of different search results and stuff that you are outside of really what we're looking for. But this actually brought me to the chapter sign requirements, which this is the first time I've actually seen a chapter labeled that. It's usually like just signs, not sign requirements. And all this stuff here is kind of stuff you want to keep in the back of your mind, depending on the type of sign that your customer wants. But for the most part, you don't really need to know a lot of this unless the sign is going to be just a little different than your typical channel letters or, something like that. So in here, it'll kind of describe more about the lighting, the illumination, especially if you're doing like some kind of EMC board sign. There also is a lot of stuff about if you have a protruding sign, like a blade sign, all that kind of extra stuff is in here. But for the most part right now, we're looking for the sign allocation allowance, the allowance of the square footage for the sign. So they usually have some kind of typical table like this that'll break down the type of sign and then the allowable area. Here, these are also broken down by businesses, colleges, directional signs, but this is actually going to be multi-tenant in a shopping plaza. So there's also broken down by directory, ground, and wall, which we're doing a wall sign here. So we need to know the allowable square footage, which this is telling us the max sign area is going to be, the square foot of the sign is going to be equal to the total linear foot of the front mounting wall. So basically that computes to 1 square foot equaling the total linear feet of the storefront size. So after I know that, some towns are different. So what we're looking for is the amount of square foot. Like here, most of the time it's either it's in between 1 or 2. So it could be 1 square foot, it could be 1.5, could be 2 square feet per total linear storefront. Those are like your typical numbers. You don't see much more than that usually. So now we know we're working with 1 square foot per total linear foot of storefront. And now, again, we're doing all this footwork. The customer just contacted us. They said they need a set of channel letters. We need to estimate that for them. So without going to the site, without wasting our time, without having the customer get frustrated, asking him for measurements, there's plenty of different things that we can do to kind of just do a little pre-research, you can call it, pre-footwork of getting this estimate without actually spending any money. This will take us, the max maybe 2 hours if you're really into it. So here's the storefront again, and there's a couple different things that you could do. So you can measure based off of the window size if you want to guess, your window size or your door size. Sometimes people can guess per parking lot space. Here we have about 4 parking spots because it's like this is a half here, then 1, 2, 3, and probably another half here, the way the photo is like a little angled. You can also do it if you know the size of these concrete squares, then you can do that. But my favorite thing to do, and this is like a must need for sign people, is to use Google Earth Pro. So if you've never used this before, it's very different from using the online version of Google Maps. And the best thing about it is you actually get this ruler. So the ruler is going to actually measure feet, and for the most part, it's pretty accurate. I would say like 95% of the time, you get a really good measurement from this, and you can measure it at all different angles. I've tried different things. It always comes out pretty accurate. So we're going to put the address in here. It should come up just like Google Maps, and this is my favorite part, that I honestly just use it just to do this sometimes because I think this is like the coolest thing. So it zooms right into where your location is. And everything in here is kind of like 3D, gives it like a little bit of an extra like layer compared to the online version of Google Maps. But we are gonna scroll in. The only thing I don't like is like sometimes it does throw you at this angle and you're not in a total bird's eye view of it. But you can go over here to your little arrows and kind of just change it so you're more in a bird's eye straight on top. But again, like I've said, I've measured when I'm not perfectly angled at a bird's eye, and the measurement is still pretty accurate. So up here we have all of the different tools. You can drop pins. You can also save your addresses in here so you can always go back to them. There's a couple different things you can do. You can draw, you can add paths, bunch of different stuff. I really haven't used a lot of the other tools besides the ruler one, but the ruler's up here. And we're going to measure in feet. So you'll know your cursor turns into this little square-like image. And again, we kind of measured that it's about 4 parking spots wide, our storefront. So we're just going to click, and it'll create this little yellow line that's going to measure your storefront. So we're going to get about 40 feet. I've done this already, like I said, and kind of just am redoing it now. My first video actually didn't make it at all. It wasn't recording the separate windows when I was moving into stuff, so it kind of stayed only on my Corel, and then I was like talking and doing things and it wasn't recording. But I've already done all of this, so we're going back, and here we are again. So we're at about 40 feet here for a storefront. And again, that's going to be this storefront here. So I measured probably about halfway through this brick wall to halfway to the stucco wall. And we're going to measure this whole storefront as 40 feet wide. Another must-have tool that I use every single day is the snipping tool. So if you don't have this tool, you need to download it right now. I mean, I don't even care about the Google Pro at this point. Snipping tool is my favorite tool. I use it every single day. I use it probably multiple times in an hour. I take screenshots of everything, especially the codes. You could see here, like I took a screenshot of this code, and then I'll save it in my folders for this project, so you can always go back to it. You can also download, we'll go back to the code page, but you can download all these chapters separately. So when you're actually here in sign requirements, you'll see over here a lot of the town code websites will have like all these little buttons you can print, bookmark, and download. So if you download this, it'll actually download the whole chapter of the sign requirements, so you'll always have that to go back to. But I like to just take screenshots and then I save that in my permitting folder for the project. But we're going to go back to the storefront again. We're going to pull up the snipping tool, and you can download this in the Microsoft Store on your computer if you don't have it already. A lot of the newer Windows computers have it, but sometimes you do need to download it. There's a couple different versions too, but this one with the little scissors is my favorite. So we're going to hit new screenshot. The screen's going to kind of black out a little bit, and we're just going to click and drag and take that screenshot image of what we want. So that also saves into a file, and then it's going to show here. You can mark it up. You could do whatever you want on this one, and you can also save it again. But it also saved it to my clipboard. So I'm going to go right into CorelDraw, which Corel is, again, one of my favorite applications. I use Corel for everything. It's definitely the most sign-friendly, I would say, drawing program. I've used Adobe and Illustrator, like I've used Gerber, I've used Flexi. Like CorelDraw is definitely the most easiest app drawing wise for signs, especially because of the sizes that you get to, like everything is so accurate as far as inches and feet, like whatever you're sizing will always come out perfect. When I use Illustrator, I never get things that are sized correctly, and it's very frustrating, but Corel is so easy to use. It reminds me a lot of like Paint on your, your Windows old school computers, like way back 20 years ago. We were using Paint on like our Dell desktop computers, but yeah, Corel is very similar to that. So I have the storefront measurement. We're computing our, I'm going to cheat with my calculator, but I'll bring it to the other screen so you can't see me on my bad math skills. So we're at 480 for inches for 40 feet. So I'm going to size my little square here to that. The height doesn't matter, just the width, because we're just going to stretch our image out to be that size of the storefront. And this is how we're going to get our sized sign on the wall that we can accurately estimate. So I'm going to go again, like kind of halfway from that brick wall to halfway to the stucco wall. And this isn't going to be 100% accurate. We definitely tell our customers that all the time. This is like a preliminary estimate just to get them in the ballpark of what they're going to spend, because you never know. You might quote an illuminated sign and it's going to be way over their budget. So you don't want to waste too much time doing this. This is especially why we're not going to go out to the site and we're not going to, ask them for measurements, because if we come back with a price that's $10,000 and their budget's $2,000 for like acrylic letters or something, a panel sign, an ACM panel sign, then we did all that work for pretty much nothing. Or again, if they're just price shopping, they want us to do all the footwork, they don't want to do anything, they want 3 different prices and they want to pick from one of them. Like, this is the fastest, easiest way to do that. And you definitely have to just explain to them that this was a very rough estimate based off of image sizing or whatever you want to call it. So I'm just going to save this in my folder here. Oh, I already have one as that. Definitely always save your work. That's the worst thing, is when you just lose a whole file that you've been working on, especially when you go to import something and the whole thing just crashes on you. That's like, I literally will wake up from a nightmare having that dream. Okay, so we sized our storefront here. We are going to import the artwork. I actually did have already the artwork. Like I said, I did this whole job already. You could see here. I've already done all of that work. So I have the letters already. The original file in the first video that I made was actually a bitmap, which means it wasn't vectorized. So I had to trace it with my computer. So this is a bitmap because it's just an image. Nothing is vector about it. And in Corel, you can trace your bitmaps to turn something into vector. So for example, some things that I've done that are kind of really important is like a signature. I had someone that wanted their signature on a t-shirt. So they wrote on a piece of paper their signature. I took a really clear photo of it on my cell phone, and I imported it into Corel, and then I traced it as a bitmap. So there's a couple different ones you can do. I think I did line art, but I typically always go to clip art, and it will outline trace the letters. Again, I did that for this customer prior to this, but you could see the lines aren't perfectly straight. So if I can, might be able to grab, like if you see some of the nodes, they'll be off, like things won't be perfectly straight. It's definitely not a final artwork kind of design that you want to use, but it is, again, a quick tool to just get something if you don't have a vector file for that customer yet. So this was the actual logo that I sent to my estimators. So I actually don't really have to size it, but I'll just kind of explain a little bit more here. So what I did was this background part of the sign didn't exist. It was actually just these little swoosh marks, but because of the size of the flag and the pole, I really didn't want to leave this with no background. So I kind of just did this little white outline trace here, which you could see like here. It's not perfect. This is just for a quick estimate. And I'm not really sure about this little outline swoosh yet. I have to talk to the estimators and see if we can even do that because it's so thin. And then these little lines behind here are actually going to be raceways. So this shopping plaza, their code for the plaza actually says that all the signs have to be on raceways. Raceways are typically used for the electrical wiring, and it's way easier because you're not drilling a million holes per letter into the building. So instead of having like this probably would have, you know, a couple different holes here where you're drilling in through the stucco to get those letters individually attached, plus the individual whips for each letter. But if you have your raceway, you might only have 2 through bolts or something similar to that, depending on the size of the raceway. So instead of having 8 holes or so much, you know, you'll have 2 or 3, which obviously the plaza owners, they don't want to do all of the remediation after every single tenant moves in and out. So raceways are more likely to be seen in a multi-tenant plaza like this. So what I did was I kind of, actually a really big part. Okay, so I didn't do that yet. When we looked at the town code, we were only allowed 1 square foot per our linear storefront. So our storefront is 40 feet. So that's going to mean you would take 40 and you would times it by whatever your storefront allowance is. So in this case, it was 1, so we get 40 square feet for the sign. If it was 2, it would be 40, because 40 is the linear storefront, right? This is what we measured our storefront to, 40 feet. So we would take 40 and we would times it by 2, and then we would get 80 square feet for our sign. But because the code here is only allowing 1 square foot per each linear storefront foot, we're only going to get 40 square feet. So when I took the sign and I sized it, the first thing I did was I went over it with a box and I wrote down the measurements of the box in inches, and then I converted it to feet. And I think it ended up being way over the size because obviously there's all this negative space in here that is not being used for the sign, but we were still trying to just see what the size was. So what I actually had to do was I drew boxes around all of the individual letters here, and I broke it all down to be the different size in inches because CorelDraw is mainly only per inches. So I did every box. So I had 4 boxes. I converted the boxes, the inches, into feet. And then I times them all, so I got the square footage of each individual piece of the sign here. And then when we put it all together, I believe I came out to, it was like 37 square feet. So we were good. As long as you're under that 40 or you're at that 40, you'll be approved by the town, no problem, you know, unless they have some kind of other restriction on, like I said, illumination or sometimes color restriction, but they're mainly looking out for the square footage and obviously your attachment method to the building. So this sign is within the square footage allowance. We have our raceways on here. I'm not sure about the swoosh mark. That might not be allowed just because of the way that it's attached. It might have to have a second kind of stud with a spacer down here. Not really sure how that's going to work out yet, but I'll kind of leave that up to the estimators. Okay, so I am gonna go back over here to the drawing that I've already done, and I'm gonna kind of show you what I did just to show the client. So here I actually had 42 feet for the storefront, but you know, we measured it from Google. You can always kind of, you'll be within that distance a little bit. I mean, give or take 2 or 3 feet, it's not going to make that big of a deal. You're obviously not going to do anything further with this project until you do go out and do a survey. So I wouldn't do any permit applications. I wouldn't do any kind of engineered drawings. You know, I wouldn't do any manufacturing, obviously, before you go out and do that survey. So this is, again, we're kind of doing all of this before doing a survey because we're not making any money off of this client asking us for an estimate. So if the client does approve the estimate, they give us a deposit, then we have more security in the fact that we're going to obviously go forward with this job, and we're going to go out, we're going to do the survey, we're going to get all these measurements, we're going to, you know, double check the town code, double check the square footage before we submit permits or do any engineer drawings. And yeah, and then we'll see how the job goes from there. So here, this is the, again, same photo with the sized sign. I like to do 2 different pages because I did before put the sizes here on the actual storefront of the sign, but when the customer looks at that as the first page of your kind of document that you're sending them, it gets really confusing. It looks kind of cluttered. It might not look centered, a couple different things. So I like to just call the storefront size out on here because this is the actual image. And again, we're computing this 42 linear storefront footage into the square footage of the sign. So we're just showing them this is what we think the sign or the size of your building is. You're kind of just letting them know, you know, we think this is 42 feet, but we're not really sure. So we're calling it out here so you can notice that. And if it changes for any reason, if it's like dramatically different, say it's like 35, or if it's like 50 feet, you know, obviously they get more of a square footage for their sign, and then obviously the size of the sign is going to change, which means the estimate is going to be more or it's going to be less. So I like to call that out here on the front page and just show a really clear image of the sign. This is kind of just my header that I use. I'll have the logo of the company down here and, you know, all of our information, address, phone number. Here I also didn't call out the colors really yet. I usually will do like a Pantone and a Sherwin-Williams color or a 3M vinyl, any kind of colors I know that will be needed for manufacturing when or before we go into permitting. Those will be called out here. So this is kind of just explaining to the customer what we're quoting to them. So this is going to be one set of facelit illuminated channel letters and a logo on raceways. I do like calling out facelit. I mentioned that in my video before because a lot of people now see the word halo and they don't understand what that means. They think that halo just means illuminated. They don't understand that if that illumination is coming from the front of the letter, the side of the letter, or, you know, what it typically means is the rear of the letter. So I do like calling out facelit because at least that way, if they don't understand what that means, they'll question it, which that means you can give them a description of what that is. And then on the second page, I like to do the sign itself with the call out measurements of the size. If you don't know, Corel does have a call out tool. So there's a parallel dimension tool and also a 2-legged call out, which is like an arrow where you can kind of put a text box after. There's also these other call out dimension ones that I don't use too often. But for the parallel one, you just click a little bit above where you're going to do your dimension and drag it down to where you want it to end. I usually do it a little bit bigger than it And this is accurately sized, but obviously this image is scaled down to the size of a piece of paper. So it's coming out to 2.91 inches right now, which isn't right. But what I did here to get the 58 is I just broke this dimension apart, and then you can double click, and this is a typical font, like text word. So you can put in whatever size you want here. You can jamble, whatever, and change that size. And then I just usually make it a little bit bigger to fill it out. So that's exactly what I did here for the 58. I'm gonna delete this. So I just called out what the actual size is here so they can kind of see what we're measuring based off of. It's not like we're just measuring, we're not calling out the overall size of just the letters here. We're calling out the overall size of the letters and the logo, and then obviously the overall size of the height. These two images I grabbed off Google real quick because I didn't have my external hard drive plugged in to get my other drawings. These are just bitmaps literally from Google. But I do like showing the customer a little bit more about what they're getting, because other companies that they're quoting with, they might not show them that. And if they don't understand what they're getting from them, but they understand what they're getting from you, they might make that more informative decision and go with you. So I try to give the customer as much information as possible, especially if they have someone like an engineer or an architect or some friend in construction who they're showing these drawings to. If they're comparing them with you and another company, they're probably going to make the decision to go with the company that's giving them more information, because it just kind of shows them that you know what you're doing, you know what you're talking about. We know that we have a raceway, that our power supply is in the raceway. It's not behind the wall. We're drilling through the wall, we're doing studs, we're doing these different kinds of things. We're calling out that it's an acrylic face. It's not different kinds of material. It's not neon, it's LEDs. You have drain holes. You're just showing them these little things that just make them feel better about their decision and picking you as a company to work with, because it makes you look more educated overall, I guess. At least that's the way that I think about it, but who knows? It might just be the price overall and they don't really care what they're getting, but hopefully they make the right decision. So this is the second page, and then usually I will either do a PDF document or I will simply screenshot both of these pages and I'll put them right into the body of the email, because I've gotten a lot of feedback from the customers that if they don't have to open a file or look for an attachment and they open the email and they see their sign first, it's kind of like a little bit of a wow factor. Like, oh wow, you took my logo and you put it right on this building and you made it look good, right? You added measurements, you explained to me what it is, you explained the size. You've called out all this information about what the channel letter is, so I don't have to go look it up myself and find the wrong information. I've gotten a lot of feedback that that's a little bit of a wow factor, so I've really started to do that more often, and I think it's a really good thing. So back here, this was the actual, this one is still sized. So after I do this layout here, like I said, after I finish these two little drawings, it doesn't take me more than probably 20 minutes to lay these out and just put the sizes in there real quick, especially if you already have this kind of header and if you already had some drawings of channel letters or acrylic letters, whatever you're doing for the customer. If you have one file with this stuff you can copy and paste, it will make your life so much easier, and this process will be so fast. Like, you'll be able to just throw jobs out left and right for estimates. So I'm not actually doing the estimating work on this. I'm just doing the drawings and the sizing for the customer and sending it over to the estimators so they can import my artwork into their system and kind of break down all the materials and the cost of what they need and what the customer price is going to be. So after I do those layouts, I would just, select my whole image here, which is kind of the image I already imported originally. But I would export this as an EPS file, and then I would email it over to the estimating department so they could get me a price on it. I mean, this is like the simplest, easiest way to get a really quick price for your customer without going out to site, without asking them or burdening them with any kind of measurements. I mean, I did, again, all of this probably within an hour. Between the longest part is like searching for the town code. That's probably the little bit of a difficult part, because sometimes, like I said, I went to the town website and it was only specifically zoned into downtown of that area. So I had to go out to the county, and that was a little bit confusing. But once you get a hang of it and you do it often, it really comes secondhand to you. You already know all these things. Now I know if I ever get a job in this county again, I'll know that. And because we're local to here, it's obviously something we're probably going to do a lot more of. And having that information up front definitely makes you more confident when you're speaking to the customer. Now, if someone else from this plaza comes in, we already know. We don't have to go, we don't have to ask, we don't have to second guess it. We know it's 1 square foot per the linear storefront. So all that information, every time you do permit research, it's really good to keep all the information that you can find, especially if it is a local area to you, because you'll always need it again. Yeah, so that's how I get estimates out super quickly without going out to the site or doing anything. So if you like this video, let me know. I plan on doing a lot more like this. I do this multiple times a day, so it's super easy for me to record it. This one, I know I didn't show too much information. I had already done some of this, and like I said, I recorded a whole video and I lost it. So I already had a lot of that stuff in there, but I plan on doing more videos on Corel and how I use Corel in the sign world. I've also done videos on Sign Agent, which is a program that I use almost every day as well for really large scale projects, like multifamily housing projects or large hospitals and clinics that have multiple signs. So go check out the Sign Agent videos. I also plan on doing some about Dropbox, how I use Dropbox for all my files and organizing everything with all of our customers and our projects. I also plan on getting into some financial videos and a lot of project management stuff. I've been in the sign world myself for 10 years, and I don't know why I haven't started recording all this stuff sooner, because it's stuff that I do every single day. It's so easy. I've really made a habit out of all the things that I've done, and I really want to help other people experience the same thing that I'm doing. So I've also gotten feedback like about Sign Agent. People aren't happy that I'm sharing kind of like the secret of the world, but at the same time, I feel that it's really important for all of us to kind of share these things with each other in the sign industry, because we're all helping each other. And at the same time, if we are competitors, I mean, we're all doing our own part. We're all our own different people, and we're all going to do a project differently. So a customer is going to not just pick you, hopefully based off of your price, but also the way, you know, that your customer service is, and a million other factors that play along with just an estimate. So, you know, this is one way that I felt I could help some companies just really quickly get an estimate out and, you know, move along fast with a project. I think that's the most important part in this industry. So the more I can help you guys, let me know. Definitely like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to me. Like I said, a lot more will be posted soon. And you can follow me on Instagram, follow me on YouTube, follow me on Facebook. It's Let Lauren Help You. I also, like I said, I do a bunch of other things right now, mainly focusing on the sign stuff because this is my full-time job. So thank you for watching, and I hope that you liked it.